Hello, welcome back to another one of these videos. This time we're going to be going over Outside. This one is admittedly a bit interesting. If you're a pencil puzzle solver that follows, I think, cave logic is what it is, to some degree. It's kind of like cave in the way that you have to put the mines. But anyway, I digress. The way this one specifically works is that all non-mines are orthogonally connected, so you can see, like, for instance, they're all orthogonally connected. There aren't any like isolated groups like this, or even since they're even with them being diagonally connected, it's still no good. They have to be orthogonally connected. We can see that they're all orthogonally connected, and all mines are orthogonally connected to the outside. So you can see like these ones are connected to the outside as well. They don't all have to be in the same group, as you can see even in this correct one they aren't, but they all have to be in a group that touches the outside orthogonally. Alright. We can go and just get into it. First of all, though, this is a major pattern that you have to recognize for this. It's so major I'm not going to use it in the context where I would usually. If we ever run into a situation like this is just not logically allowed. And here is kind of the reason why. Right? So we know that this yellow mine needs to connect to the outside, correct? So let's just say it does through like this or whatever. We have now split apart the other mines, right? But there isn't actually a way to do this that doesn't either split apart this mine from the rest of them, or if you really go into it, you can eventually just do something like that where this mine's completely isolated. The point is, this pattern can never exist, right? So one context, for instance, where we can make a deduction based off that is we know this group of mines is not allowed because it runs into the same problem. So we can then say there is a mine here. And this is actually a very powerful tool for just solving these puzzles in general. Right, so for instance, like that tells us this mine implies there's a mine there as well, which is potentially useful information. Whereas if we have this mine here, then we know there is not a mine there, but that also tells us there isn't a mine here for the same reason, but doesn't tell much else. And actually, we always know then that there is not a mine here, so we can just mark that as a non-mine. There we are. Okay. So now we know yellow implies this, right, just by difference logic, but that overloads this one, so we know it's the red case. There we are. We can go and fill in that. And what that tells us is there's exactly one mine here, but let's consider what happens if this one is a mine. Right, we get these here, but we can see no matter where we put the other mine for this 3, we always run to the same pattern, so we can then mark this one as a non-mine as well. And here, real quick, I'll just finish up all of this. That's just from clues I already finished. Okay. So we know there's one mine here. We also know there's one mine here. That tells us there is one mine here. You can kind of see that this is a common pattern. There can't be a mine there, so you can mark this as a non-mine. You can also just mark that as a mine real quick. And I think I'll keep those marks for now. We can similarly see from the diagonal kind of argument, or whatever, the checkerboard maybe arguments we'll call it, that there can't be a mine up here, because that would put us into the same position as before. Okay. So now then, here's something interesting we can consider. What happens if there's a mine here? Well, then we know that these mines are finished. Actually, no, this doesn't really tell us anything on its own, does it? No, because that's still valid. I was thinking it might not be. That's my bad. That's okay. I guess... Oh, it's actually something we know is since there is one mine in this region, we know that this 2 is finished up with that, so we can mark both of these, and there we go. That's what we need to mark to conclude things. So we can just, this is just from some of the logic we talked about earlier, and just finishing up stuff, we can mark all of these. We know that this is kind of a similar idea to connected, that this mine needs to escape. The choke point just happens to be, it has to go there, right, because we're only considering orthogonal connection, so it's a little bit more restrictive. But yeah, and that actually is just enough to solve us the puzzle. We only have 0 mines left, so there we are. We're going to go ahead and go to a more challenging outside puzzle now real quick. Whoops, don't know why I went to that. We'll start with here, I guess. And oh, wait, is that... Oh, well, okay, looks like we were actually starting with a more challenging one. That's okay. I guess then we can just go directly to some of these. We can see we have 3 ones of these we can do real quick. Dang, not realize those were right over there. Oh well. Okay, so we can go ahead and think about this real quick. Okay. Something to note is that if we assume there's a mine here, right, that means there must be at least, rather, if we put one here, it means that there could be 3. There could be more if there are more down here, but let's first consider. Actually, never mind now. If there's just one down there, there's exactly 3 up here, and one of them is this. But I think this is actually going to give us our contradiction, right? So we know then that neither of these can be filled in because only one more of these up here can be filled in. We can just mark those to make that simpler. By the checkerboard pattern, we see that these can't be here, so then we get both of these. But in either case, no matter where we put this last mine, we have another checkerboard pattern, so we can actually say that this one is not a mine, certifiably. Okay. Let us think next about what else we can deduce from here. Let's say that both of these are mines, just so we can still keep thinking about this 3 idea up here, right? Okay. So then we also know that we can never have it be the case where both of these are mines, like we run into the same problems before. So then we know that one of these 2 is a mine, right? What that also tells us then is we need one more down here, run into another problem. So thus we know we can only have at most one of these be a mine, which is telling us that specifically there is at most one of these as a mine, right? I think more what it's getting at though is we're running into 2 possibilities. Either one of these is a mine, in which case one of these 2 ones is a mine, or none of these is a mine, in which case we run into a problem as well, right? So let's think about it real quick. Then we need one mine up here, exactly, and oops, checkerboard again. So we can safely then say that one of these is a mine, one of these 2 gray cells is a mine, and this one here is not a mine. So there we go. Now we can just kind of mark it like this or whatever. We know by parity one of these ones must be mine as well, so then we get one of these is mine. And then we can say this is the case as well, just to finish up this 5. There we are. Okay. And now we can use, first of all, we know this 3 must have one of these just by parity. We can also say this 3 cannot have this one, it would overload it, so we know that line is right there. Okay. This also tells us that one of these 2 must be a mine, just to avoid the checkerboard. We also, though, can now see that this 4 needs to have 2 blacks and 1 gray, just because of its construction. If we consider having different number of blank cells, either as none, in which case it's underloaded when we finish, or it has a number, which is a parity argument. So we know that this one must be a mine. More importantly, we know only one of these 2 is a mine, and exactly one of those 2 is a mine, so we can safely say this is a mine and this is not a mine. There we are. Okay. From here we can also click on that. This 2 is already finished. In order to leave, we know it has to go there. This 3 is finished. That is also forced just to get this outside. And this finishes up the 7 clue total. This 1 clue is already finished, so we can also finish up this 3 clue and this 2 clue. And we've now reached a point where there are 4 mines left and 4 squares open, so we can just click that and move on. Alright. That one kind of fell apart towards the end. That's okay. Now we can do an outside liner real quick. Okay. So first of all, we know this one is exactly 5 just because can't be 7, there aren't enough squares. If we have 1 down here, then we know that there must be at least 1 here. It causes the checkerboard pattern, so we can safely mark it like such. There we are. Okay. So now then, one thing we do know is with this 3 is actually a 2, and in order to avoid checkerboard pattern, it must be there. But now we can kind of use the idea that all the all the non-mines must be orthogonally connected to show that this one must leave through here to get to this, so we know it's going to hit both just because then it puts it to a 1, so there we are. This one we know is a 2, so then that puts us up to 3 clues for this 5. We know there must be 1 more of these as a clue as well. Okay. Let's consider possibilities real quick. Actually, I don't think this one really tells us much of anything. No, it does not. Okay. But we know in this red case that it must go up like this, right? Yeah. Okay. So I guess then what this is kind of telling us is maybe it would be more fruitful to look into this 4. First of all, we know it must be a 3. If it's a 5, then it's completely surrounded, correct? Yes. So something else we can kind of think about is, instead what I'm going to do is consider a case where this one is a mine. And first of all, this gives us a lot of information already, like we know this as well. I'm just kind of changing up the starting assumption. Okay. So let's, I guess, just think real quick. we already know that in the context where this one is a mine, that this one up here must be a non-mine. Let's think about what happens if this one is also a mine. Then we go up here. We know only one of these two can be a mine. We've run into a problem. There we are. So it's blocked off from this region, and there aren't enough mines to completely fill this area, so we would have to have some non-mines that aren't orthogonally connected. So then we can also say that in this yellow context, in this one, or yellow, in the yellow case, this one is also a non-mine. So there we are. Okay. So in the yellow case, we already have two around this. That means that the last one of these must be over here. It can't ever be here because of the checkerboard pattern, so there we are. Same thing applies to the red case, so we can actually just safely say that. And that this one is a non-mine as well. This also actually gives us some information that, like, none of these two can ever be mines for the same kind of reason. So there we are. Okay. And we similarly know that since there's exactly one mine over here, and this 2 is really a 1 or a 3, that this cannot be a mine. If it were, then we would need to have another mine down here to get this up to a 3, but we already know that can't be the case, so there we are. That finishes up the 4. That actually finished up this 2, which will finish up this as well. And that 3 is actually a 4 because I already had at least 3, so we can just kind of go through some of those. Now then, this 5 can either be a 4, which it already is, or a 6, which require 2 more mines here. But that would overload this 2, so we know it's a 4. There we are. Okay. Next, we know that this 2 needs exactly 1 more mine around it to finish it, so there's 1 up here. That leaves us with 2 mines remaining, right? So this 4 can only be at most a 3 clue, right? Because if it was a 5, then we need another 3, which we can't get, so we know there's 1 mine in this region, and 1 mine up here, right? So we can mark that. But now we know that this 1 is finished with only those, so we can say the mine for this 4 is down here and just mark both of those. Unfortunately, I think clicking on the clue won't work because the logic to determine it's not a 5 requires outside clues, and they don't do that for you in this game. If they did, you could just click through every clue just blindly. Anyway, this 0 is now finished, so there we are. That finishes up the puzzle. We're now going to move on to an outside wall. Should be pretty fun. Okay, so let's go ahead and begin. We know that... hold on, sorry, I'm going to respond to something right now. Sorry. About that, there we are. Okay, so first of all, we know that since it needs to, for outside, it needs to be connected to the outside here, kind of obvious deduction. We know that if there's a mine here, it must go outwards, but that breaks this 1 clue. So we can then say that this is not a mine. This tells us that there is 1 mine in this region. Sorry about that. I will be back to focusing on this in a second. Okay, so then we know there's exactly 1 mine in this region right here, and there's 1 mine somewhere around here. But importantly, this tells us there cannot be a mine up here, because if there were, then there would be an unavoidable checkerboard pattern somewhere, since we can't have a group of size 3. So we can just mark this as a non-mine. Now then. Okay, we're going to break this into 2 cases. One of them is one where, well, there's actually a few cases here. That's a little tragic. We can consider what happens if we have our other mine in this region. That tells us there's 1 mine up here, right? Additionally, then, that means that there are exactly 2 mines in this region up here, right? Yeah, there we are. Alternatively, if the actual mine is down here, then similarly there's 1 here, but then we know both of these are mines, which we can actually just say with this. And then that tells us that... that tells us that our 3rd mine, rather, must be one of these 2, right? Yes, so that tells us then that this one is not a mine right here. Okay. Cool, and then the remaining 2, there's 1 of them that is a mine. So I guess now we can kind of think about what happens in the case where, we know that if both of these are on the same side, then we get a similar thing. Also, I'm realizing this is atrocious to look at. Maybe I'll just consider them individually. Okay. So let's say there's a mine right here, there's a mine right here, there's a mine right here, and there are 2 mines up there, right? There are a few kinds of things we could look at. One of them is if we have this kind of situation, and we're just gonna, it doesn't really matter, we're like mirroring wise, it's the same idea. Then we know it will look like this, right? Where these mines have to extend like that. Just because this needs to be a group of size 3, and we can't exactly extend this one, it would break the 1, 2. The alternative is if it's something like this, where then we know that this one will be the 3, so it still goes up there, and then the other one would just be over here. And then the last case, we know it's something like this, where it is a group like that, and then it extends up that way. Now, I'm trying to think if any of these are going to run into any problems with just general outside ideas, and it kind of currently looks like they don't, which is a little unfortunate. What this might be saying then is that we need to consider some mines like or rather some places where mines could maybe be outside of this grid, I guess. It's not exactly clear. One thing that we do note is that in the case where there's like a 1 mine here, for instance, it needs to extend out like that, but in the other case it just kind of does that and it's fine. Okay. Similarly, this one just had to extend out like that or something. This isn't exactly giving us a ton of information right away. Right, so let's kind of keep thinking. So we always know that at least one of these corner mines will be filled. We can't have neither of them because then this would have to be 1, but we don't have any groups of 3. Correct. So we can always say that at least one of these is a mine. We'll just mark that with something like this, right? And there's also the case where 2 of them are mines. Then we know this one can't be a mine. If it's a row of 3, that breaks the 1, 2 clue eventually. Okay. So now then, in the red case, it can go down like this, right? Yes, that would be fine. It can also instead do something like this. But we know that either way, the yellow case, this one will always be filled. Similarly, we know in the red case, this one will always be filled. Cool. Okay, so now then, we also know in the blue case, neither of these will be mines. We can mark both of them like this real quick. There we are. Okay. So in the yellow case, if this goes down like that, then it can either go down like here, in which case we have this pattern right here, or really it could be either of these. But what we more importantly know, well, no, actually, really this is the only thing we could deduce for sure. Or if it goes over here instead, then we have one of these 2 is a mine, correct? Yes. But then what we additionally, well, I guess actually I wonder if this runs into problems. I feel like it might. We know first of all this one actually can't be a mine, so we can guarantee this is a mine, and then in order to get a group of 2, we have run into a problem. Cool, so we know the yellow one must go down like this. And actually, this just tells us this top one is not a mine. There we go. Okay, so that is the first part of this result we're looking at. One thing we can kind of note is that regardless of which case we're looking at, the group of 2, and for the blue case it's regardless, it will always extend downwards. We know that the group of 2 for this clue is going down like this, so neither of, nope. What I should have really said was this one is not a mine. Okay. We're going to real quick reset this just because I'm trying to get the perfect score and I'm not above safe scumming, but okay. So we know from our logic that something like this, it's going to be some pattern with like this kind of idea, right? Yes. Okay. So I'll break it up into our 3 cases again. One of them is where both of these are, well, no, now we know that only one of these ones up here can be filled, don't we? Yes. Okay. So what that tells us then, if only one of these ones is filled, then we know we are in the case where neither of these are filled, correct? Yes. Cool. Just by differences. So therefore, if we can say that it's like this. Now then this 2-2 group, we can just finish that off real quick. We can finish off both of these as well, and this group has to extend up here to avoid checkerboard. This one's finished. Cool. Looks like this puzzle's more or less done now. Okay. Now we know that there must be one mine, we know there's a mine here, and that mine is independent of this group extending to the outside. There's only one mine left, so this one's a mine, and none of these are mines. There we go. That finishes up the puzzle. Alright, well, That was unfortunate. First blunder of, I guess, channel. That's okay. Happens to the best of us. Anyway, that I think is going to conclude my video on Outside. Next time we'll be covering Negation, which, if you watch my My Three Variants 2 video, is the alluded to harder version of their cross variant. Not to be confused with this one. It's okay. There's a bit of overlap with the names, but it's not a huge problem. Anyway, regardless, that is where this video will end. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good one.